our first guest of the day, and I've had the pleasure of working with him on Get Up and First Take the first few months I've been at ESPN. With no further ado, we go to the hills of Jersey. Mr. Damien Woody, welcome in on the show. What's up? How we doing?
What's up, fellas? How you guys doing?
Doing great. We're talking about Jerry and Micah, obviously, because it's ESPN and it's 12 o'clock and we're going to do it all day. I asked Darius Butler here the question, like, if you're a teammate and you see they're not taking Micah, taking care of him, does that affect you, or is it more just, hey, I'm worried about my own job. We got football in 15 days. I got to do my thing.
Yeah, I think. Listen, in most cases, guys are just like, bro, I got to focus on getting myself ready for this season. I think Jerry's world is different from everyone else. If you look at the players down in Jerry's world, I think there's a lot of corporate players. Micah tends to go. He has a big personality. I think that's part of the reason why this thing there's a disconnect here is because Michael Parsons is unlike any of the guys in that building. He's very vocal. Obviously, he has his own podcast. He's going to say what he wants to say. That's not necessarily the case with a lot of the guys down there with the Dallas Cowboys. So I think those guys are like, you know what? I'm just going to worry about getting myself ready. I'm not going to get involved on the business side. Jerry's paid me. I'm not going to ruffle the feathers down here in Jerry's world.
D-Wood, I look at this team, and Orlovsky was on with us a couple of weeks ago on Get Up, and I looked at him side-eyed because he said they cannot possibly win without Micah Parsons. Do you feel that way about the Dallas Cowboys, that like the season's over already if he's not on the field week one?
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're much less a team. Obviously, you got a dynamic player in Michael Parsons, but listen, at the end of the day, how much did they win last year? I know Dak Prescott was out, but the quarterback position is always the most important position. And I heard you guys talking about, well, kind of playing devil's advocate as far as Micah's impact on the team. And this team hasn't been to an NFC Championship game since what, '95 or whatever it is. They've only won one playoff game. And so if you're going to pay somebody 41, 42 million per year, I think you want to have more bang for your buck, if you're the Dallas Cowboys organization. Now, I'm not absolving the Cowboys because we know how they do business down there, and we've talked ad nauseum about this whole handshake agreement that Jerry thinks he has with Micah, and that's leading to all this nonsense that we're going through. But listen, at the end of the day, the way that the Cowboys do business is not the way you want to properly construct a roster. How they wait till the last minute to sign their stars, which is adds on millions of dollars, and those are players that you could be signing to build depth within your roster. So I think this whole thing is a mess. If you're going to trade Michael Parsons, quite honestly, I would have done it in March. I actually talked about it early in the offseason. Like, listen, I don't know if we see the Dallas Cowboys as a Super Bowl contending team. Why not trade Michael Parsons and try to start rebuilding this roster the way you want to? Because he's the most dynamic player that you have on your roster.
I want to say the Khalil Mack deal came on Labor Day weekend. I remember covering it, and I remember that happened. So it's still like this could happen. I remember the Vikings and Eagles traded for Sam Bradford Labor Day weekend. Like, this is the time. After rosters are set, okay, what's the move? But this would be one that had been in the works. Two-time Super Bowl champion, Damien Woody. Of course, you played for Bill Belichick. We are now less than 2 weeks away from seeing his collegiate debut as head coach. Big picture, you've known Bill for decades. Your thoughts on this whole entire thing as they were about to kick off for this regular season?
For me, it's like maybe the biggest story in college football. I mean, you're talking about arguably the greatest coach in NFL history. Now is Chapel Bill down in North Carolina. And listen, I went down this offseason and saw them in spring practice. Listen, they had a long ways to go. And Michael Lombardi, who's a friend of the show, and Bill Belichick, I talked to both of those guys, and they knew they had to remake the roster. And obviously, with the transfer portal, you can absolutely do that. Listen, the one thing I will say about North Carolina, they will be prepared. There is not a coach out there who will make sure you are more prepared than Bill Belichick. And I look at this Carolina schedule, guys, they could easily get to 8 wins, easy. I mean, it's not like they got a bunch of cupcakes on their schedule. So I think Bill can come out of this thing in year one looking pretty doggone good.
Vrabel's back too. You played with him. Your thoughts on the Patriots now that Mike Vrabel's the head coach?
I've been saying I'm bullish on the Patriots.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
bullish. Listen, we all know it's been a disaster in New England for the past couple of years. For a variety of reasons, whether it's personnel, coaching, all of the above. But now you got Mike Vrabel in the building, and everyone knows Mike Vrabel is one of the better head coaches that we have in the game. You've added a ton of players, whether it be free agency or via the draft, to really improve this roster. I'll make the argument that the biggest acquisition was getting Josh McDaniels back as the offensive coordinator. I think he's going to do wonders for Drake May in his second year at the quarterback position. And so I think New England's going to have a damn good defense. And I think Josh McDaniels is going to coordinate an offense that's going to complement that defense. Don't be surprised if you see the Patriots in the playoffs this year.
Oh,
Let's go.
Hell yeah, D-Wood.
Boston Connor, your response.
Yeah, I mean, Woody, you basically said it. That is an incredible thing. But as a player with Mike Vrabel, what is he like just, on the day-to-day? Just because it does feel as though, guys like Vrabel, MCDC even in the beginning, like they aren't viewed as football, masterminds. They're just more viewed as, those football-type guys who are going to have a tough culture but aren't actual brainiacs. I think everyone who knows Mike Vrabel, though, feels like he is one of the smartest football minds out there. What do you think he's going to bring strategically to both the defense, the offense, the special teams, and just culture-wise? Because it has been ugly in New England, and everyone up there does have a very high hope for this season.
No, listen, I played with Mike Vrabel as a teammate, and the one thing I knew as a teammate, I'm like, Mike Vrabel's going to be a head coach in this league. There's bar none, no questions asked, because his football IQ is through the roof. Like that's one thing you can say about Mike Vrabel is that man knows X and O's. Like he's going to make sure that he knows offense, defense, and special teams. Those guys are going to be prepared in the same ilk. Listen, I don't like making these comparisons with Braves and Bill, but I'm just talking about from an X and O, like just make sure guys are prepared. Mike Vrabel is going to have the New England Patriots prepared. Okay, and he's a very hands-on type of guy. We've seen all the stories this offseason where you've seen him in scuffles. We've seen him running drills,
The pad on.
himself, and so that's just Braves being Braves, man. He's one of the dudes, but he's a very smart X's and O's coach, and he knows the pulse of the team and knows how to push the right buttons with players.
My first little nugget that I'm going to drop today, a little inside info. Just the name to watch is Stretch. Do you know who Stretch is?
Oh yeah, right. Striking.
Striker. So
right.
John Streicher is the like game management coach that followed Vrabel from Tennessee, went to the Rams for a year, and now is in New England. There is thoughts around the league about who's the best offensive coach, who's the best defensive coach. To a man, everyone says no one knows clock management, game management, down and distance better than Vrabel. Vrabel's on it.
Is he new Ernie Adams?
Yes.
This is his Ernie Adams stretch.
yeah.
So you're not gonna see him.
He can't look. You start comparing guys. You don't just throw around.
Okay, Ernie Adams is the legend. Ernie Adams the legend. We know that.
Respect here.
Stretch is Ernie
I love
Adams.
Stretch.
Ernie Adams for the Gen Z folk.
Okay.
Could
Is that right?
Could be, okay.
He could have a career arc
get there.
Okay.
like Ernie if all goes well.
But I mention him because
whoa,
with
whoa,
Vrabel, it comes McDaniels, it comes Stretch, it comes a whole different coaching staff, and there's a professionalism around it that they didn't have last year. And that's no insult to Gerard Mayo. I think that staff might have been overwhelmed, might have been a lot of situations there with the roster. They just feel like they are significantly better and much improved. Ty Schmidt, what do you got?
Yeah, D-Wood, curious your take on the Steelers. Obviously, they've went all in this offseason, and, their offensive line, I think, has improved, or Steelers fans would say it has, but there's still a lot of question marks. Do you think they're good enough to keep Rodgers upright for most of the season? And are they a legitimate Super Bowl contender with all the moves they've made?
And listen, I think the offensive line with the Pittsburgh Steelers is the biggest unknown, and I think the biggest factor in how well this Pittsburgh Steelers team can play and how far they can go. Because I think if the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting the Aaron Rodgers that we saw like towards the end of the season last year when he was healthy, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers will be hell to play against. Because listen, first of all, any Mike Tomlin coach team is always going to come prepared to play. We know their identity lies on the defensive side of the football. But the one thing, when you saw the Pittsburgh Steelers last year when they collapsed, the primary reason why they collapsed is because they couldn't get anything generated on the offensive side, particularly the quarterback position. You didn't get anything out of. I don't think that'll be the case with Aaron Rodgers. Here's the key. I think running the football in this Arthur Smith offense, I think that's going to be the key because what you don't want is for teams to start teeing off on Aaron Rodgers getting the third and long and all that type of stuff because you can't run the football. If they can run the football with these two tight ends, Fryermuth and Jonnu Smith and DK Metcalf on the outside, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers will be cooking, and this is going to be a team that we're going to be talking about a lot later on in the year and in the postseason.
If you got a fantasy draft coming in the next 2 weeks, late round flyer, Calvin Austin. I think a lot of attention is going to be to the tight ends, a lot of attention to the wide receivers. I know that early on, Austin's been a stud in camp, and already they're talking about him being a legitimate number two. So I would think Steelers offense should be better. Tone Diggs, what do we got?
Yeah, I loved hearing you talk about that, D. Wood. But let's talk about the team that Aaron came from, the team that they play in week one, the team that you finished your career with, the New York Jets. It feels like they actually finally have an offensive line. Through the draft, they got their tackles, and then in free agency, kind of Armand Membu, Shrags.
I got killed for that.
Do you feel good now about both lines of scrimmage being the kind of strengths of that team? And what are you hearing out of camp about Justin Fields and the quarterback and how he's coming along?
Yeah, listen, I think the line of scrimmage, particularly the offensive line, is going to be the strength of the Jets. They're going to want to run the football. Yeah, I've said before, when it comes to this Jets team, if they're not leading the league in rushing attempts, I don't know what the hell they're doing in Florham Park because that's exactly the formula they should go. We know that, this is not going to be some Air Coryell type of offense in New York. They're going to get off the bus and you're going to know exactly what they're trying to do with bad intentions. They're going to want to run the football. And you got a dynamic quarterback in Justin Fields. And I've always said, they should incorporate some of that early Lamar Jackson, Baltimore Ravens type of offense. You got to play to this young man's athletic ability. And I think when you got a three-headed, backfield led by Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, the athletic quarterback and offensive line, that's going to be the recipe for them. They got players on all three levels on the defense, so it's going to be defense and running the football for the New York Jets this year.
I got a lot of friends back in New York who are Jets fans. One of my buddies, Danny, is a longtime season ticket holder. At the end of last season, gave it up.
Wow.
I'm over it. They had one preseason game where the guy had 38 minutes of offensive possession against the Packers in the rain, and he's like, all right, I'm intrigued. Then this past week, it was awful at practice for apparently the offense, and then preseason, D-Wood, you're there in Jersey. You know many guys like Danny, my friend, who's a diehard Jets fan, even though he gave up his season tickets. Reason to be optimistic this season, or are we talking this is just a bridge year, let's get a quarterback next year and let's move on?
I think, listen, here's why I'll be optimistic because of Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn has set the tempo throughout the whole organization. They're going to have an identity. They know who they are, and they're going to play to those strengths. Okay, anyone who knows AG, he's a no nonsense type of guy. He's not going to take any bullshit from anyone. He's going to call you out, and that's been that's been a far cry from the way it's been at Florham Park over the last 4 or 5 years. And so those players over there are going to be accountable. I don't know how many wins they're going to have, but the one thing I do know what they're going to be, they're going to be disciplined, they're going to play tough, and they're going to play smart, and then let the chips fall where they may.
D-Buck.
Hey, Woody, now, two-time Super Bowl champ, you've been in locker rooms, and more teams that could have won the bowl. What teams do you see out there? We know the Eagles, we expect them to be dominant again. The top of the AFC is absolutely stacked. But what other teams out there that you can see from the outside looking in that, okay, they maybe have what it takes, offense, defense, special teams, and then head coaching and organization-wise to make a deep run in the playoffs and maybe raise that line ball at the end of the year?
Listen, I've been on them. I've been talking about it for a while. The Denver Broncos.
Okay.
Oh.
I think the Denver Broncos, to me, are a team that not enough people are talking about. They could have the best defense in the league this year. They were damn good defense last year, and they only improved throughout the offseason this year. Bo Nix with Sean Payton in year 2. We know how these things go. Year 1 to year 2, this is usually when you make your biggest jump. I think Bo Nix is going to light it up this year. Obviously, you got Cortland Sutton. keep an eye on Franklin. Another young wide receiver that I think is going to break out. They're going to be able to run the ball. They got, talk about offensive lines. They may have the best offensive line in football in Denver. And so when you look at everything that the Denver Broncos got going on, I'm telling you right now, do not sleep on the Denver Broncos this year.
You bold enough to put them over the Chiefs?
I'm not there yet because I know the Chiefs have improved, but I will say this. This will be the hardest journey in the Patrick Mahomes era, in this division and in this conference because of that team that I just talked about. I think Denver is legit. I think they're going to be one of these teams that we're going to be talking about late in the season that's going to be a contender in the AFC for a Super Bowl.
Before we let you go, you're in Jersey, obviously. You hear people talking. Right now, there is a lot of Giants optimism. And you saw Jackson Dart, how well he played against the Jets. Mm-hmm. You see the energy. Jameis is doing videos with Eli. Of course, you got Russ, who's going to be the starter. Giants, just looking at it now on August 20th, your thoughts heading into this season?
Man, I think the Giants are better than what people are talking.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Like, we got to stop sleeping on the Giants. I don't know if the national audience have really peeped out their front four.
Oh yeah.
I think they got the best front four in football. Like Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Abdul Carter are going to give people hell out there. Okay? Like, they're going to be really good on defense. They got a star wide receiver, Malik Neighbors. Okay? Here's my only question.
Yeah.
Can they play with a lead?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can they play with the lead? If they can get leads with that defense, the New York Football Giants will be a problem. And oh, by the way, that young quarterback Jackson Dart, big time juice. Big time juice. I don't know how much longer Russell Wilson will be able to hold that young man off because what I've seen in the preseason, I would be like inclined to start him and just let it go, let it rip, just go play.
Woo. Like that
out the gates.
Love that.
One of the great things that I can do being in New York, I was able to go to those joint practices, and you go to the joint practice, and Russ is starting, taking with the ones, and Jameis is the hype guy. Dart has, and I don't know if the word is swag or it's just
moxie.
Moxie. Like, but Dart is carrying himself like he belongs. And having watched Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson, there's been first-round picks that are like, all right, we think maybe this could pop. Jackson Dart, and I'm not comparing him to Daniel Jones just yet. I'm not comparing him to Zach Wilson, who was a number 2 overall pick. Jackson Dart was walking around that practice field like he belonged. The players were responding to him. And there was like a carefree feel to it where the pressure of the world is not on him right now. This could be the perfect situation. Let Russ start a couple games. Let Russ go as far as Russ can go. And then when it's time, everyone will know. All right, let's give Jackson Dart the ball. Real quick as we end, Brian Daboll, a guy you know, obviously. Give us a good Brian Daboll story there, Damien Woody.
Oh man, I put like confetti in Brian Daboll's like air vents. This was like in New England, and so we always played pranks and stuff like that. So Daboll got pissed as hell, got red as hell. That was the first time I seen him like get ticked off. But man, we got so many stories. Like we don't even have enough time on the show to really go over all that stuff.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we do, but okay. D-Wood, we appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for jumping into the show. You're the man, guys. Damien Woody.
Yeah, D-Wood.